Good morning, everyone. This is Mark Collier with OpenStack Foundation, and I'm going to be your MC today along with, you might be on mute, Ashley. So Ashley's going to join us. Introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Ashley Ferguson. Yes, I was on mute. Sorry about that. Welcome, everybody. We're glad you made it.
Yeah, so we're really excited. This is the first time we've done this particular event as a virtual series. And, before we kick things off, we just wanted to give everyone a couple of minutes to get logged in and adjust their settings, and just going to ask you a quick question. And, one of the things we're going to be using today is the chat function in Zoom. So if anyone wants to let us know in the Zoom chat, is this your first OpenDev? Let me know, and maybe we can hear a little bit about everybody. And then in just 1 minute, we'll be kicking things off. All right, looks like people have discovered the chat. It looks like Wes is his second OpenDev. Yeah, looks like we have quite a few new folks. Awesome. Well, I think we've got a lot of people logged on now. So with that, I'm just going to go ahead and kick it off here. So this OpenDev is all about open source used for infrastructure. That's what this series of events is about. We have 3 of them. This week's event is really focused specifically on large-scale usage of open infrastructure software. So all that great open source software used at massive scale, the issues, the challenges, the best practices. So we have so much great content to share with you, a lot of conversations where everyone can get engaged and we can really move the ball forward on open infrastructure. And so to tell you a bit about how we're going to be collaborating through Zoom today as our meeting tool here for the event, I'm going to turn it over to Ashley to tell you how to participate.
Thanks, Mark. Yeah, we're really excited to get started here. So a couple things to mention up front. So let's talk about how to participate. We've done OpenDevs in the past, and they've been really great, thought-provoking, discussion-oriented, collaborative events that focus on solving open infrastructure challenges common to everybody, and we'll talk about solutions to those problems here. So congratulations if you made it here. You made it to Zoom, which is one of our main tools we're using obviously today. And then the other tool is called an Etherpad, and we'll get into that a little bit more later. Okay, so back to Zoom. If you have a question about the current topic we're on, Mark already mentioned the chat, so feel free to hop in there. If you have any questions along the way, feel free to jump in there, ask a question. Obviously, there are tons of people on here right now, so we will do our best to answer all of those questions. And then you'll also see the mute function, just as a courtesy to others speaking, make sure you're on mute just to cut out on any background noise. Obviously, this is a virtual event and everybody is adjusting to virtual events right now. So just to help it go smoothly, make sure you're on mute, double check that every now and then, and things will go great. Okay, so back to Etherpads. So Etherpads are an open source tool that we use for real-time notes, collaborative feedback, action items, just taking notes on the conversation and focusing the discussion. So our moderators will be watching those throughout the discussions, asking for feedback on certain topics, or they might drop some questions in there. So feel free to hop in and answer those and interact with us. And I think Aaron is also dropping a link into all the Etherpads that we have. We'll have one per session. You can also head to the online schedule and we'll have links to all of those sessions, Etherpads in there as well. And of course, if you need help with anything during the event, if you're having login issues later in the week, again, this event is Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, feel free to email events@openstack.org. And if you're already in the chat in Zoom, feel free to drop a question in there, like Mark and I mentioned. And then you were also emailed an Etherpad that has some tips and tricks to help you have the best experience. Like I said, this is the first time we're doing this event virtually, and so we just want to ensure that everything moves smoothly and everybody gets the most out of their OpenDev experience. And then as a friendly reminder, this is an OpenStack Foundation event, so we do abide by the OpenStack Foundation Code of Conduct. So just as a reminder, that just means be courteous, conduct yourself professionally, And please respect each other. And if there's something that you need to report as a code of conduct violation, you can head to that URL at the bottom, openstack.org/code of conduct, and that'll have instructions on how to do that there. And now I'll turn it over to Mark to introduce our amazing programming committee who helped make this event possible.
Yeah, thank you. And I have to say, as people have been joining, we have people from all over the world: Australia, India, Brazil, Nepal. It's really incredible. I think we had somebody from Australia, Paris, even Texas. So we've really got the world participating. It's what we love about these events. And this particular event this week was made possible by our programming committee. I mean, these folks worked really hard to pick out the specific topics that we're going to dive into that are going to be moderated in each session, that all fit within this large scale open source infrastructure theme for the week. And so I just want to thank everybody here, Allison, Belmiro, Beth, Masahito, and Roman. They all put a ton of time and effort into it. So thank you to all of them for their efforts. And some of them will be moderating sessions throughout the week as well. And next, I'd also like to do is go ahead and thank the sponsors. So all of the companies that made it possible for us to put this event on, that provide us financial assistance, funding for everything we do, and that includes this event. So thank you to all these companies for your support for the mission that we're pursuing here today and this week. And with that, I'll like to turn over next to the Executive Director of OpenStack Foundation, Jonathan Bryce. Take it away, Jonathan.
Well, thank you, Mark and Ashley. It's great to be able to add my welcome to everyone. This is our first virtual OpenDev. It's very exciting to have everyone working together over the next few days. This isn't necessarily how we plan to do this event, but I still think it's going to be great to have everybody collaborating here. And some of you might have been in Denver a year ago. I gave a keynote there. And at that keynote, I talked about a music project called the Silk Road Ensemble. It was made up of musicians from a number of different countries, and they were bringing their cultures and their instruments and their style of music all together to collaborate and create kind of this new set of music and performances that they were doing together. I also, in that keynote, I showed this photo from one of our PTGs in Denver, where we got our community from all over the world to come together. There was only one instrument; it was a piano, but everybody brought their wigs and their personalities, and this is one of my favorite examples of what we've done in our community, where we've come together and collaborated in our own ways. So the point that I was making in all of this is that these examples of these people coming together, they were showing a collaboration without boundaries, and that kind of collaboration, where we work across communities and countries, companies, languages, time zones, cultures, that is so powerful. What struck me though is, as I was thinking about it this week, I was giving that keynote to a single room of people in a single city, to a subset of our community that had been able to travel to Denver and attend that event in person. A year later, we all know that the world is very different in many ways. The original plan for this week was to actually have this event co-located with a PTG in Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada. And I love Vancouver. I know many of you do as well. It's one of our most successful and favorite locations to have events. And I love getting together in person for those events. But we aren't able to do that right now. However, the collaboration can continue. This is the first virtual OpenDev that we're doing, but we recently coordinated another virtual event series for our developers, and that was for the PTG. The PTG is an annual event that actually we've done it twice a year in some years, that we've done for a number of years, and normally we've done that in person. Some of you may remember Snope and Stack. This was a couple of years ago in Dublin when the snowstorm of the century hit and we were all trapped in a hotel. So that might have been too much in person for some of us. But it ended up being a really great event in Dublin and building community. But what I thought was interesting is when we just had our first virtual PTG, we had more participants from more countries and more organizations than any other PTG. And we also saw an increase, a small increase, but an increase still in the percentage of women who are participating in that PTG. So while we weren't able to get together in person, we still got our community together, got our developers together, collaborated. And even in this new and very different reality, we actually were able to come together and make important progress and do that collaboration without boundaries. And, like I mentioned, there are some benefits to this. With these virtual events, we saw new attendees, new participants, people who were engaging that hadn't been able to engage before. So removing those barriers to participation, that's awesome, and I think that for this event series that we're kicking off, OpenDev, this is an event that's all about collaborating without boundaries and doing that in the most inclusive way that we can. So before we get started, I want to make 2 points before we dive in. The first one is, as we get started this week, think broadly about the topics that we are addressing and the ways to solve them. I mentioned, being inclusive in our event style, and I want to be inclusive in our mindset too, not exclusive at all. Let's think about real solutions that span multiple projects, multiple communities as we work together across organizations. And let's try to make our discussions mirror that attitude of inclusivity as we try to bring together the best ideas to kind of get leads on how we're going to solve big problems. This event, it has a lot of participation from the OSF community and the OSF projects, but it's definitely not just about any single project and any single community. If we look across the open source landscape, Mark mentioned, this is about large scale usage of those tools. And if we think about the tools that are out there, people are using all of these projects together. People are running hundreds of petabytes in Ceph. They're running thousands of nodes in their Kubernetes cluster. They're using Prometheus to track tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of metrics per second. And OpenStack, we have users who have millions of cores in their OpenStack environment. So when we think about large scale usage, this is a challenge that spans projects all across the open source ecosystem. And for the operators out there, that you are trying to put all of these tools together and scale them at the same time. And that is the heart of what we want to get to this week. So this OpenDev event started as a much smaller event a few years ago in San Francisco when we had our first OpenDev Edge that was focused on edge computing and defining what cloud computing meant on the edge. So this was an event that we had about 200 architects, developers, users come together and spend several days tossing around ideas. What was really valuable about that was not just the work that happened during the week in San Francisco, but it was about the progress that continued after that week. And if you look at the things that have happened since then, that edge computing group that formed up in 2017 is still collaborating to this day. They've been to PTGs, they've been to open infrastructure summits, they have continued to work together to define what cloud computing means in the edge. And just recently, I think last week, released a second edge white paper that goes into architectures for edge computing. So here we are 3 years after the event, and the work that started there is still happening and still continuing from this group of people that met during that week. This edge computing white paper, you can see it at openstack.org/edge. It's really valuable because, again, it takes that approach that I'm talking about, where it's talking about architectures, it's talking about use cases, rather than saying this particular technology in this format at this time. It's really defining a whole solution across a broad set of technologies. So that's what OpenDev is all about, thinking broadly and bringing it all together. So I think the other point that I want to make is just going back to collaboration and to the opportunity we have this week. Collaboration is made of people, so to speak. I've been talking about technology and projects and use cases, but nothing collaborative happens without having people involved in it. And that might seem kind of obvious, but I think that it's important for us to keep in mind as we start this virtual event. When we're in person, it's easy to have those kind of serendipitous interactions where we run into someone in the hall and we have a chat. I think that one thing that we should keep in mind this week as we have our first virtual OpenDev is to make sure that we are all engaging. Whether you're talking about a music group or an open source project, none of it happens without people coming together. And that's what this week is all about. In just a few minutes, we're going to get started. We have discussions throughout this week. In a little bit, we're going to have some presentations to kind of level set from some users. in the community. And we're going to be hearing from Blizzard and OpenInfra Labs and Verizon. And these are all experts. And we have moderators who are experts from CERN and Line and 99 Cloud and Stack HPC and others. But ultimately, what is very important to making this event successful is the participation of all of you who are here. I mentioned that our virtual PTG was our largest PTG ever. And this OpenDev event that we're doing virtually is already our largest virtual OpenDev ever. But remember, it's not meant to be you here as an attendee. Join the discussion, join the conversations, use the Etherpads, put your questions in the Zoom chat. We want to hear all of the feedback. We want to get those discussions going in a very interactive way so we can all share our knowledge, share our experience, and be able to learn from each other. This isn't a conference that's filled with presentations. I mentioned we have a couple this morning, but the rest of the week, it's all about discussion and moderated interactive knowledge sharing. So the goal is to share and learn from each other and identify work that we can carry forward beyond this week. So collaboration, it's made of people, and this week, we are those people. To give you a little bit of a view of how this is going to work this week, today we have a handful of sessions that are getting kicked off with some user presentations, and then a moderated session led by Belmiro from CERN. We'll have more moderated sessions tomorrow and Wednesday as well. And at the end of the day on Wednesday, we'll do a recap of the week where we can decide what we should do, how we should carry it forward, and keep the work going to keep solving large-scale usage issues in open source projects. There's also a large-scale SIG for OpenStack. That's an example of the kind of thing that it might make sense to get involved in beyond this week if you want to work on scaling challenges in OpenStack specifically. So, the large-scale SIG is a great example of something that exists, and that'll probably be tied into where we go from here. But as we go through the week, we may discover other things that are really useful. This is also the first in a series of events. As I mentioned, the original plan was to have this event in Vancouver, and we were going to have all of these tracks there in Vancouver along with the PTG co-located. Since we had to do it virtually, what we decided to do is to break out all of those events into a series. So we had the PTG a few weeks ago. We're doing the large-scale usage this week. In a few weeks, we'll be doing hardware automation, and then after that, containers and production. These events are all the same format. It's all about getting people together, meeting each other, and making those connections so that we can continue that collaboration on an ongoing basis. So before we get started, just wanted to kind of throw out a couple of ideas. Let's think broadly, think across all of these projects and communities and how we can get working together. Also think about not just what we do this week, but what we do for years to come as we collaborate. And remember that collaboration requires all of us to get involved, to share what we have to offer, and to engage. So I'm really excited to see how it's going to come together this week. Been blown away by the level of interest that we've had. It really exceeded my expectations. And I'm very happy to have all of you here joining with us to participate. So I'll hand it back to Mark and Ashley.
All right. Awesome. Well, thanks, Jonathan. We're going to have a couple of sessions today. The first one, as Jonathan mentioned, is about the users and the user stories. So I'll be kicking that off shortly. And then after that section, we'll have a short break followed by the upgrades session. This is always a hot topic. A lot of work goes into upgrades, and certainly CERN has probably done more upgrades than anyone. Belmiro is going to be an awesome person to lead that. And I will also just ask, not just for my benefit, but for Belmiro's, to listen to your moderators. We have a lot of people joining by Zoom. This is a new thing to have it, to try to do collaborative sessions by Zoom. So we're going to be experimenting here and trying to get people involved as we go along. But the moderators today and throughout the week will be trying to guide those discussions and get people engaged as we go. And so throughout the next sessions in the week, we're going to have both Tuesday and Wednesday a number of sessions, and these are all part of course, the large-scale open source infrastructure theme for this week. But diving into specific topics, we have amazing moderators for each of these, and you can actually go to this link here. We'll drop it in the chat, which has the schedule for the week, not just the schedule and the topics, but links to each Etherpad. As Ashley said earlier, the Etherpad is a very important tool as we do these collaborative events. Many of you have probably used it before, but if you haven't, it's a bit like Google Docs, collaborative editing. And so each of those sessions has their own Etherpad. You can even see some of the pre-work that's gone into it. You can start to contribute or participate or just kind of do some homework before we get to these future sessions. So again, this link here that we're dropping in chat has the links to all the Etherpads, and you can learn more about each session, plan your time accordingly this week. And so with that,